into this mess, but more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
Is the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock and I'm Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Did you see the absolute carnage that was unfolding on Oxford Street last night? Well, Suella Braverman's having none of it, she says. They're going to hunt them down, those responsible, and lock them up. Yeah, all right, good luck with that. I say it's time now to get tougher when it comes to policing our streets. I want to see a return to things like water cannons. Do you agree with me or not? And very sad news for the 12,000 people working at Wilko very soon to lose their jobs. Some people saying it is just basically the latest decline of an ever-declining high street. I say there's more to it than that. It is gross mismanagement, if you ask me, some of the things that have been going on. I want a debate on that. And the European Court of Human Rights. We go around this circle often, don't we? But the ante has been upped because the number of people that have crossed the channel in these dinghies, get this everybody, 100,000 people. Goodness gracious me. Do we need to immediately leave the ECHR? Is that the answer, or is that merely a distraction? And get this, pensions, the amount of money that we spend on them in this country will soon be more than what we spend on education, policing and defence put together. Wowzers. So let me ask you this. Is it time to scrap the triple lock on pensions? Or is it time to make them means tested? Or are you shouting at your screen, get off my state pension, I've earned it? We'll have it all to come and more. But before we get into it, let's bring ourselves up to speed with tonight's latest headlines with Polly Middlehurst.
Michelle, thank you. Good evening to you. The top story on GB News today. The Police Service of Northern Ireland says dissident Republicans claim to be in possession of officers' details following a data leak. Chief Constable Simon Byrne said today he's deeply sorry for the industrial-scale breach after the PSNI mistakenly shared details of 10,000 members of staff on Tuesday. He says the service is working hard to stop third parties from attempting to intimidate, corrupt or cause harm to serving officers. The government already assesses the terror threat level in the country as severe. A group set up to assess the risk to officers caused by the breach has already had 500 referrals. As you've been hearing, 100,000 illegal migrants have now crossed the English Channel since 2018. The landmark figure was reached as another 11 dinghies carrying another 550 people were intercepted attempting to try to cross the English Channel illegally today. In a statement, the Home Office said the unacceptable number of people making these dangerous crossings is placing an unprecedented strain on our asylum system. Meanwhile, GB News can confirm that the authorities have recovered an unmanned Border Force drone from the English Channel. Based out of Lydd Airport in Kent, it had been monitoring Channel migrants when it suffered a technical failure and had plunged into the water. The number of people waiting to start routine hospital treatment in England has reached a new record high. NHS England found over 7.5 million people were waiting to start treatment at the end of June. That's the highest number since 2007. Cutting waiting lists is another of Rishi Sunak's key priorities. Shadow Health Secretary Wes Streeting says the government hasn't done enough.
There's no doubt that the strikes we're seeing in the NHS are seeing huge numbers of appointments cancelled, operations delayed. This is disruption that doctors don't want and patients can't afford. And that's why it's unforgivable that the Prime Minister is completely absent, failing to show any leadership whatsoever. The most important thing Rishi Sunak could be doing right now is to get doctors around the table and negotiate an end to these strikes.
Nicola Sturgeon has defended her government's use of taxpayers' money on items such as VIP travel upgrades. Scotland's former First Minister says the spending probably totalled less than a flight by the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak in a private jet. Last week, it was revealed more than £14 million had been spent in 3 years by civil servants in Scotland, including £10,000 on VIP airport upgrades. Her successor, Humza Yousaf, has ordered a review of Scottish Government bank card spending. The high street chain Wilko has collapsed. The company's appointed administrators after failing to secure a rescue deal, putting around 12,000 jobs at risk. The chain's been unable to find emergency investment to save its 400 stores across the UK. Its chief executive saying the retailer had no choice but to enter into administration after leaving no stone unturned in efforts to revive the business. The Home Secretary says anyone who took part in suspected looting on London's Oxford Street yesterday must be hunted down and locked up. 9 people were arrested as police wielding batons clashed with dozens of youngsters. It followed posts on TikTok encouraging people to steal from a well-known sports store. Some outlets shut their doors as crowds gathered and officers issued 34 dispersal orders. Suella Braverman linked it to lawlessness seen in American cities. Wildfires in Hawaii have killed at least 36 people and forced thousands more to leave their homes. The blazes have devastated much of the resort city of Lahaina on the island of Maui, forcing people on occasion to jump into the ocean to save their lives. Entire neighbourhoods have been burnt to the ground as winds from an adjacent hurricane have fanned the fires. Lastly, Virgin Galactic has completed its first space tourism flight, sending 3 passengers to the edge of space. A mother and daughter who won a competition and 80-year-old Olympian canoeist John Goodwin were on board. They enjoyed weightlessness for around 5 minutes as the VSS Unity reached 85 kilometres above the Earth before gliding down to land in New Mexico. Richard Branson's company will begin offering monthly trips to customers, joining Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin and Elon Musk's SpaceX in the space tourism business. You're with GB News across the UK on your TV, in your car, on your digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. This is Britain's news channel.
Thanks, Polly. I'm Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 o'clock tonight alongside me, Joanna Williams, the author and the academic, and David Curtin, the leader of the Heritage Party. Let me just ask you both quickly, would you volunteer to get on that flight to space?
Yeah, I think so. It could be fun.
Would you?
Yeah.
Would you?
I would, if I had the money, or if
it was a competition. You could have entered a competition.
I wish I'd seen the opportunity. No, I think it's. I mean, obviously, you will have to have the money ultimately to be able to enjoy things like this. But why not? I think it's a huge opportunity if that's what people have got the money and they want to spend it on. Good luck to them.
Yeah, you see, I don't think that I would at this stage. Maybe like a bit later down the line when they've had a few more runs. We all know that you kind of can go and come back safe and sound. But I think at this earlier stage, I think I'd be a little bit too chicken. I'd be terrified I didn't come home at the end of it. Would you? Would you volunteer at this stage? Don't worry about the money, but as a competition entry, would you have a bash at trying to get into space? gbviews@gbnews.com is the email. What's on your mind tonight? And you can tweet me as well at GBNews. Now, if you were watching last night, you might remember that we had a conversation about social media and whether it's a scourge on society, whether it's a force for good or what. And the thing that sparked that conversation last night was the fact that there were groups of people organising that they were going to join forces on Oxford Street here in London and basically ransack the streets and try and loot whatever it was that they wanted to get their hands on. I'm showing you some of the footage now. The absolute state of the goings-on. They would join forces. There was apparently a bit of a dress code, bally and gloves, which to you and I is your balaclava and your gloves, and the plan was just to go and help yourself, quite frankly, to whatever it was that you felt fit. And I look at that, and to me, it looks like groups of kind of feral animals. They're charging from one side of the street, en masse charging to the other side. I cannot imagine how frightening it must have been for your average random worker or shopper or tourist or whatever it is to have been caught up in that. Anyway, today, Suella Braverman, she's not having any of it. She's taken to Twitter. If I can just show you her tweet, she says, basically, we cannot allow the kind of lawlessness seen in some American cities to come to the streets of the UK. The police have my full backing to do whatever necessary to ensure public order. She goes on to say that those responsible must be hunted down and locked up. And she says she expects nothing less from the Met Police, and she has requested a full incident report and all the rest of it. By the way, I love when she says we cannot allow the streets to become like that. I would say that ship's already sailed. When you see scenes like that, we're already there. David Curtin.
Yes, certainly what happened yesterday was very disturbing. It was chaos. It was essentially a riot. But I think there is a difference between here and what's happened in America in terms of what the policy is. I mean, you have some cities in the USA that have actually completely given up and are saying, we're not going to arrest people. They're going to give an absolute carte blanche to gangs to go into stores and loot and shoplift. It's still against the law here, and the riot police were still deployed. And this is where the riot police should be deployed. They should be going after people when there is an actual riot like this. I've seen them be deployed against freedom protesters, which I think was absolutely terrible and wrong. But here they were actually doing their job. I think they did get a control of it. It took a few hours. But, you know, this kind of thing needs to be stopped before it happens. But you know, that comes down to a whole range of societal factors, the prime one being good parenting and good family stability.
Indeed, and I'm going to come on to the cause of it in a second. But Joanna, your thoughts on what you can see unfolding there?
I think it's absolutely shameful, and I think it should be a real wake-up call to everybody in Britain right now about the parlous state of adult authority. I mean, it seems to me that these are children, teenagers, who are completely out of control. It should give us a wake-up call about the role of policing. The police clearly haven't got a grip on the situation for this to have developed. I think it's still the case that we see too many police out on pride marches or policing what people get up to on Twitter rather than actually patrolling up and down our streets. But I think David's absolutely right. It raises bigger questions about adult authority in all forms. Parents, teachers, social workers, even shopkeepers. I think we all in society, we all have a role to play in telling these children this is not an appropriate way to behave. This is shameful, disgusting behaviour.
See, I don't know if I'm a little bit old-fashioned, because I know you're not really supposed to have these views these days. It's not very PC. But I do think that you're supposed to fear the police a little bit. I think that if you do something wrong, you should be, oh no, like, I hope the police don't get wind of this. And if you hear the sirens, you see the police, I think you should be like panicked a little bit. And, oh no, what's going to happen? I don't think there's any fear at all of the police. I don't think there's any fear at all of legal consequences. I would like to see, when you look at, I don't know, countries like your France, your Spain, places like that, those coppers there, they do not mess about. They will be front-footed, they will be piling in, they will be sorting it out, they will get things like water cannons involved. They go a little, I mean, look, this is France, what I'm showing to you now on the streets. I mean, look at that, everybody. And yes, I do appreciate there'll be people at home saying, pack it in, Michelle, that's not kind of what we want on these streets. And I know as well that there's been reports that say that so-called warrior policing leads to more unrest on the streets as opposed to less. But surely then there's a balance.
Yeah, look, well, I don't think you have to worry about not being politically correct, because that's the problem. The police are so politically correct in this country. They're more concerned with policing what people say on social media. I mean, there was a terrible other story that we saw yesterday of a police going and arresting an autistic child just for questioning if someone was a lesbian or not. Why put all that manpower into harassing and arresting a child who's done essentially nothing wrong? But this kind of stuff happens, and then the response is very, very long. They take a long time to get a grip of the situation, and there isn't any preventative policing either. There's no neighbourhood policing in place anymore. It's all reactive. What they need to be doing, instead of like policing social media for hurty words and hurty tweets, is actually going and building relations with the people in the communities, so there is more of a trust there where it can be built. But then, as you say, they need to come down hard if there is a real riot and there is real crime.
And what about things like water cannons and stuff? Would you support the use of that?
I'm in two minds about that, because I know it is effective, and you do see it deployed in other places like France, Germany and the Netherlands, but it's not really the done thing here in the UK. We like to have, you know, the Bobby on the beat is the idea that people have of the policeman in this country and the relationship that they'd like to have between the community and the police.
Yeah, but it's a two-way exchange, isn't it? So, yes, you know, I don't want to be water cannoned. Absolutely not. Thank you very much. And therefore, I will walk around behaving myself. I won't try and orchestrate mass unrest, mass looting, mass stealing and all the rest of it. And actually, if some of those kids, Joanna, if they did think to themselves, you know what, I might come face to face with a scene that I don't really want, quite frankly, whether it's water cannons or whatever, they might think twice about it. They might not think they're so kind of cocky and hard and filming themselves for kudos and clicks on the likes of Twitter and social media.
Well, I certainly think that in a healthy, normal society, people should be wary of the police. Certainly I don't want to ever do anything that would bring me into contact with a police officer on suspicion of being on the wrong side of the law. But I think when you come to police wielding batons like we see in France and talking about the use of water cannon, I think that, to me, says that we've already lost control of the situation. I mean, for water cannon to be the kind of threat of last resort, you know, suggests that kids are already pretty out of control. If you're having to think about using those kind of measures, you want, again, a sense of adult authority and respect for the law, respect for police officers.
But that's gone.
But that's the problem. That is the problem. And I mean, back in my day, at risk of sounding very old, you know, it wasn't fear about being water cannoned that stopped me going to rob a shop on my high street. It was fear of my mother, fear of the shopkeeper, fear of neighbours, fear of people, adults in the community, seeing what I was up to, telling my mother, you know, that would be the bottom line.
Oh, I don't know. Sometimes I do feel like an old biddy sitting here saying about how life should be and how it was when we were young. You speak of shopkeepers, by the way. Something caught my eye in California. This story, you might have seen it. It's gone quite viral, so it has. This is a shop called 7-Eleven. You can see, if you're watching, some fella, he goes behind the counter. This is about the second time or something he's gone to this shop in one day to create carnage in there. Apparently, the story goes that he'd tried to threaten these shopkeepers with a gun. He's got like what I would call like a, you know, like a bin. Anyway, long story short, one of the shop workers decides, you know what, I've had enough of you. And he gets like, I don't know what you'd call that, like a big piece of wood, like a plank of wood, and he absolutely batters that shopkeeper. So that is kind of some of the things that's going on in California. I don't condone, before I get into trouble, I don't condone walloping people multiple times over with a plank of wood, obviously, although I do suspect that that fella will probably think twice the next time he decides to take a bin and go ransacking stores, that is for sure. But it won't surprise you to know that that shopkeeper, he is now in trouble with the police in the US, and he is facing investigations and all the rest of it when it comes to potential assault cases there. Make of that what you will. But I want your thoughts. Do you think we're too soft in this country when it comes to policing? Is there an argument for police to be tougher, or does that go against what we're trying to achieve with the whole policing by consent and a nice, happy, friendly society? Give me your thoughts. GBNews@gbnews.com. Now, sad news next. If you work at Wilko, of course, we know by now that it is going into administration. Why? You tell me.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, I've got Joanna Williams, the author and the academic, and David Curtin, the leader of the Heritage Party. I'm asking for your thoughts on the whole policing situation and whether or not the streets are out of control in this country. And if you think they are, then what is the answer? Get your thoughts coming in. I'll have some of your responses in a few minutes. But for now, the high street chain Wilko has collapsed. We've been wondering, will it, won't it? They've been trying to turn things around, and unfortunately, and I think it's very, very unfortunate, they have failed to do so. So administrators have been called in. Now, the reason that this is such a big deal is about 12,000 jobs now will be at risk. 400 stores across the UK And this has really made kind of lead news across this country today for a variety of reasons, Joanna. So some people are saying it's just the latest example in a failed high street. Other people saying perhaps there was something not quite right with the management of the organisation, etc. But whatever the cause, this will be deeply troubling in these kind of economic times, uncertainty, inflation the way it is, 12,000 people to potentially be losing their jobs.
That's a huge number of people to lose their jobs, and it'll be mainly women who work in Wilkinson's, and this is tragic. And
How do you know? That's a bit
well,
sexy.
it is, but it's also the reality. We know that retail is dominated by women. I mean, this is a statistical reality. You know, this is not like losing the mining jobs or the steel industry jobs as we would have done in the past, which were dominated by men. You know, this loss of jobs will have a real impact upon people's families, upon the capacity of people to put food on their children's tables, and that's tragic. I also think it's really sad for people who don't have cars, people who perhaps don't have Wi-Fi at home, who are more dependent upon shops in the high street than people who are more able to shop online or take a car to an out-of-town centre. Having said all of that, you know, just a very personal experience. I was in Wilkinson's a couple of weeks ago, went in with a list of 5 things, came out without getting any of them. And I hate to say it as well, when I asked for help, being able to find the things I was after, the customer service was also appalling. So I don't really see any point in keeping failing businesses on life support indefinitely. The only thing that's sad is that, you know, if we were in a more thriving economy, perhaps there would be other shops waiting to take the place. I think we do need to have a bit of a view on what the high street is for nowadays.
David?
Yeah, well, I think it's a perfect storm, isn't it? It's a very sad day, and of course for the people who've lost their jobs and so on. But I think that there's a lot of competition here because there are a lot of businesses and high street chains doing a similar thing. So where there is a lot of competition, one of them will go out of business when economic times toughen up, and that's what we are in at the moment with interest rates going up. So people are being squeezed. They haven't got so much disposable income. They haven't got as much money to spend. So supply, also demand for the products that they're selling is going down, so they're making less profit. And that's the market. I mean, it's a terrible thing, but it's just what's happened in this storm.
What I found quite interesting is the GMB union. So they've been very outspoken about this. I can show you one of their tweets on the screen in just a second. But what they're basically saying is that the situation around Wilko is, in their minds, entirely avoidable. They're saying it's entering into administration is an avoidable disaster. They say the bargain retail sector is strong, but bosses never capitalised it. They go on to say that these 12,000 jobs are now at risk because of mismanagement. Now, I really quite agree with that sentiment because in a cost of living crisis, the one thing that people desperately need to get their hands on are bargains. You know, you're always going to need to have your essential items and to get them as cheaply as possible, as conveniently as possible. The opportunity for that now is here. And when I think about my experience of Wilko, going in, a lot of the shelves are bare, but I can think of quite a few stores now that I can apply that to. A few stores that I go into, you can't really get the products that you need. The stores, the shelving, they look like they're in the 80s still, and I want to get hold of them and shake them and say, what are you doing? And on the flip side, in this bargain, you know, like the retail space of bargain and discount retailers, I can think of people like B&M's, home bargains. I was saying this the other day, I'm quite addicted to like the middle aisles of like Aldi and Lidl. You always, God only knows what you find in there, and you end up coming away with a lot more stuff than you perhaps even need. But there is such a competitive space, and I think things like opening times, like the Wilkos that I used to go to, they closed at like, I don't know, say 5, half 5. Some of their competitors will be open till 8 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at night and stuff like that when people are finishing work. And I just think, have they evolved with the times?
Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, they say the bargain retail space is strong. And yes, it is. There are a lot of shops and there are a lot of chains in that sector. But, as you say, if Wilko are not getting their act together, if they're not getting it right, if they're not providing the service that people want, then, yeah, it is a case of perhaps some incompetence on the part of the managers. But
should the government do anything now? So you've got 12,000 people potentially about to go on the dole if they can't find other opportunities. opportunities. Should the government step in?
I don't think so in this case, because I think there will be other opportunities for them in other chains. People will find new jobs relatively quickly in this because it's a very flexible sector.
Do you think they should step in?
No, I don't, and I agree. I think you have to let the market work, in effect, or we're not living in a capitalist society. We're living in a much more state-managed economy, and that's not what the UK is supposed to be. You know, I think the point is when interest rates were at an historic low, you could get away, perhaps, with a certain amount of mismanagement. But now that the rents on these properties are increasing, the market's becoming that much more competitive, we're going to lose some of these zombie economies. And my prediction is zombie businesses that have been kind of teetering on the edge for many years. I mean, this is no big surprise about Wilkinson's. What's coming down the pipeline, though, unfortunately, is that there are a lot more businesses in this precarious situation as well. So I think this is likely to be the first of many that we see going bust. And to a certain extent, this is sad. It's sad for the people who are losing their jobs, but hopefully it will lead to some reinvestment and some new businesses emerging.
I'm interested, do any of you out there work at Wilko? How do you feel? Because I've worked in retail in the past and it is like a little bit of a family, isn't it? And often, as Joanna says, these jobs, often they do fit around, whether it's your family, your studies or whatever else it is. So I wonder if you're affected by this, how do you feel? Pete says, we live in Worksop, which is home to the Wilko head office and the warehouse. You say this is absolutely devastating news for this area because you're saying it's one of the main employers in that small town. And that's what I mean. There'll be so many people in that kind of environment. If it is one of the main employers, you're not just going to have your retail staff, like Pete said there, you're going to have your head office staff, you're going to have your warehouse staff, perhaps multiple people in one family relying on that single employer. I think this is a real shame and I feel very, very sad. And I get very frustrated as a business person as well because I think management have got a responsibility. You have a responsibility to your workforce and to try and do the very best things that you can do. Apparently they've got turnaround staffing and all the rest of it and just couldn't figure it out. Just to give you some context, this store goes back to 1930. They had a single hardware store in Leicester. And then they expanded and expanded, and we know the story from there, don't we? Get in touch and let me know if that story does affect you and whether or not you think the government should be stepping in and doing something about it, or is that just free market? And this, unfortunately, is what happens. Right, let's take a moment, shall we, just to have a look what is going on with the weather.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest broadcast for GB News. I'm Greg Dewhurst. We're going to see increasing risk of showers as we move towards the weekend, but there will be some sunny spells, just turning a little cooler too. If we look at the bigger picture, this area of low pressure moves in another area of low pressure for the weekend, bringing the risk of showers, though not as windy as recent weekends. For this evening, it's been fine end of the day for many, but we do have this area of rain pushing north and eastwards. It could be heavier for a time across Northern Ireland as it crosses into Scotland too. Elsewhere, generally quite a cloudy, warm, muggy night to come. A lot of cloud around, some drizzle over the hills. Temperatures remaining in double figures, 17, 18 degrees as a low for some of us. A bit of a cloudy start to Friday, still some rain across Scotland, heavy at times, pushing away northeastwards, and then slowly through the morning it starts to brighten up. We could see this area of cloud push into southeast England though to give some showery rain for the afternoon. Elsewhere, bright afternoon, sunny spells and scattered showers, turning breezy around western coast, making it feel a little cooler here. Still highs reaching 27 degrees towards East Anglia. And then Saturday, this low approaches us, gives spells of rain across the north and the west of the UK as the winds pick up. Best of the drier, brighter weather holding on towards the southeast, but even here we'll see some showers moving in later on in the day and quite blustery. Temperatures a little cooler too, and that continues into Sunday and Monday with further showers and temperatures a little below average.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Paul's just got in touch and said, Michelle, why can you not say the name of the store properly? The name is Wilko. Yes, I know that. I just perhaps have a different accent to you, Paul. Lots of you getting in touch saying that the failing of Wilko is just reflective of what is going on in the high streets right now. David says, basically, your guest has hit the nail on the head. It's the dying high street. Gone are the days that you could pull up outside in your car and load the compost in the boot. You're absolutely right. You've got things like the red lines and no parking zones and LTNs and all the rest of it. That makes shopping harder on the high street. Andrew is talking about lawlessness. He says, this is what happens, Michelle, when you have a generation of children that grow up without any form of discipline at all. They go out on the streets, they don't respect their teachers and the police and all the rest of it. And I do actually agree with you on that one, I have to say. The shelves have been bare for a long time, says Helen, but she's very sad to see Wilko's go. She absolutely loves it there, she says. Barbara's blaming some of this on things like self-checkout, self-serve. That has changed the shopping dynamic. Bernard says, why isn't it law that when companies are making profits, they have to put aside some of this in order to cover for their future losses? I think, Bernard, I think they've got themselves in a bit of a pickle financially, I can tell you that. And Leonard has been in touch saying, Michelle, will you get off your soapbox when it comes to pensioners? Give us a break and stop talking about taking our pensions. Well, it's not me, Leonard. The question has been posed because of the amount of money we will soon be spending on the state pension, and we're going to come to that before the end of the programme. I'm just merely posing the question. I'm just asking, should pensions be means tested or not? I can tell you now that is the conversation that has got you guys talking a lot tonight, and as has the next one as well. Do you think we need to leave the European Convention on Human Rights? Is that the answer to the crossings in the Channel, or is it just a distraction? I'll see you in 2.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Dewbs and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I am Michelle Dewberry, keeping you company till 7 o'clock tonight. Joanna Williams, the author and the academic, alongside me, as is David Curtin, the leader of the Heritage Party. And there's a dog. I don't know where the dog is. I can't help you with that, but I can definitely hear a dog barking, so if you can hear it as well. And you're sitting there thinking, are my ears going a bit funny? No, they're not going funny. Your telly's absolutely fine. I don't know what's going on. I'm sure we will soon find out. Lots of you are furious about the question. The question is not me, about the pensions. A lot of you are angry with me about, at the start of the show, I said that I want to ask you about pensions very soon, in about a couple of years' time. We will be spending more, get this, than the police, the education and the defence budget put together on state pensions. So I'm merely asking a question, which is indeed my job. Is it time for pensions to be means tested or for the triple lock to be scrapped? If I had £1 for every one of you that's shouting at the telly, get off my pension, I've earned it, I'd be a very rich woman. But for now, let's talk about the migrants and the ECHR, shall we? Because get this, 400 people across the channel today in about 8 separate boats. And you know where we go with this conversation now. The people that crossed today, pretty much there or thereabouts, give or take, would be enough people to fill the Bibby Stockholm just for today's arrivals. So people now are up in the ante about this conversation about, right, that's it, immediately out of the ECHR. Where do you stand on it?
Yeah, we should have done that a long time ago. I mean, that's my policy in my party, the Heritage Party, and other people have said that. There's even people in the Conservative Party who are saying that now. I know they're a minority voice, but I think it's sensible because this is the thing that the human rights lawyers use time and time again to stop the government or the Home Office from deporting people who've come here illegally. And so any legal block, and this is a legal block, which they use, we need to come out of it.
Yeah, but what's the consequence? Because the ECHR isn't purely just about migration. It's not just about, you know, asylum claims. There's a lot more to it than that. So, yes, I can see to some extent the argument about saying, get it out, get us out of it now to stop those boat crossings. Great. But at what cost? Yeah,
well, the thing is, the ECHR was set up by British lawyers in 1950 to help the countries in Europe that have been devastated by Hitler and National Socialism. We don't actually need it in this country because we have all the framework of law that the ECHR is actually based on. We have Magna Carta, we have the Act of Settlement, we have the Bill of Rights, we have the Anti-Slavery Acts, we abolished slavery. That's one of the clauses of the ECHR.
So you're telling me you think that we could exit the ECHR and there would be no material impact on any of our rights and all the rest of it in this country?
No, we wouldn't. We have common law as well, so that our fundamental freedoms and our human rights are already written into British law, whether it's English or Scottish, over the centuries. So we don't need it. We need to get out of it because we do have this problem now, which was never envisaged in 1950 when it was written, of this mass migration and people playing the system. And that's what we need to get out of, because that is a massive problem for this nation at the moment.
Well, I absolutely agree. I completely think we should be out of the ECHR for all the same reasons that I supported Brexit back in 2016. I think if you believe in national sovereignty, which I do, then the only people who should have a say in the laws that govern this country should be British people. We should be able to vote out of office the people who have the power to make the laws that govern our lives. So the idea that there's some international body that is able to determine what happens in this country, I think is absolutely outrageous. But having said all that, I don't think it will solve the problem of small boats, and it won't solve the problem of illegal migration.
So why are they saying it then?
Well, because I think it's being used as an excuse. I think there is no political will in this country from the people who actually are in charge, whether that's from lawyers, government officials, civil servants, people in the media. I think there is no political will to end migration, high levels of migration to this country.
Well, also a brave man.
I think they talk the talk, but actually no, because if you look at what's happened in this government in relation to migration, obviously we put most focus on people coming over in small boats because that's a very visible sign, but actually legal levels of migration have risen phenomenally, and we see that all the time whenever there's some kind of demand from business, be that fruit picking or, you know, pouring cups of coffee, you know, the first call goes up, oh, we need higher levels of migration, and more often than not, the government's bowing down to it and saying, yes, OK, you can let more people come here to fill that gap in the economy, rather than training up people in Britain to do those jobs.
It's a little bit of a sledgehammer to crack a nut, because If people wanted to, surely we could do things like the turn-back operation, what they did when they had Operation Sovereign Borders over in Australia. So surely there are things that we could actually do to stop people entering into the British waters, entering into this system in this way in the first place. I just don't know if it feels like a kind of like quite a radical solution when all of the other things haven't yet been explored. But one of the things that people will say about pushback and turn back is they'll say, Michelle, when you start pushing back these boats or towing them back or whatever, people are at risk of drowning. Now, this notion about drowning, I don't know if anyone saw the Diane Abbott tweet. So just to catch you up with the story, Lee Anderson, he was in hot water a couple of days ago because he was saying that if these people, these asylum seekers, illegal asylum seekers, didn't want to go on Bibi Stockholm, they should, his words, F off back to France. Anyway, he got in loads of trouble for that. And you will be aware as well that 41 migrants died in Italy. Diane Abbott very quickly responded and said, in response to that, that these migrants have indeed effed off, but she used the right words, but I'm being professional because it's tea time, to the bottom of the sea, basically. And she's had a backlash for that as well.
Yeah, look, it's unsafe to come across the English Channel, of course. People are taking a risk to do that, but they're doing it because they get rewarded.
People didn't die in the Channel, obviously.
No, obviously, they were talking about people in Italy. There have been people who died in the Channel coming across occasionally, but it's a very, very small percentage of the people who do try to come across the Channel. And people, they do try to come across when it's calm and it's sunny and the waters are placid. Obviously, so they've got a high chance of getting here, but it is still risky. But people do risk this because they get rewarded for it. They get hotel accommodation, they get free cash, they get free healthcare if they bring in children as well. Not that people come on the boats with children, but people coming other ways. The children get free education as well, especially if they anchor themselves here and bring families in from elsewhere. So, yeah, the Australian system, that was good. We need to do that here as well, push the boats back.
Do you know what I don't understand? And, OK, you can say, oh, Michelle, you're thick or whatever. But if someone was in France and they want to, and they reckon they've got a legit asylum claim and all the rest of it, why would they spend, I don't know what it is, 4 or 5 grand or whatever on this dinghy with these people smugglers? Why wouldn't they just get on a EasyJet or whatever, come into the country legally on a plane and then present at an embassy or whatever and say, right, I'm being tortured and I'm not going to return, and camp up on the doorstep of the asylum office? What am I missing?
Well, you can't. I mean, this is why we now have border controls in other European countries. So when you go on holiday and you want to come back into the UK after you've been abroad, you have your passport checked in France or wherever it is in the airport.
What I'm saying is, if you're a legitimate asylum seeker, so i.e. you're not just going to chuck all your stuff on the board, overboard, and make things complicated and perhaps not exactly true. So if you are what you say you are and you're being persecuted, tortured, whatever, so you've got your passport, you've got your papers, why wouldn't you just get on a plane, pretend you're going on holiday?
You wouldn't be allowed to. Well, because...
Of course you can get on a plane.
But there are, you can't, not from everywhere around the world. You need visas.
No, in France. So if you're in France, you can get a flight to the UK.
Not without a French passport. If you had a French passport, you could. But if you've got a passport from Sudan, you cannot get on a plane in France and fly to the UK because the British passport control based in France will be saying, no, you need a visa. Where's your visa? In order to be able to come here, and you wouldn't be able to get that visa. I mean, this is the problem with the system.
Albania then. So all these people that were doing it from Albania, they can surely have got a flight to the UK. This is what I mean, if there's an obvious thing that I'm missing, and I'm sure you're all yelling at your screen saying, Michelle, you are so stupid, you don't understand. But I don't get why.
You see,
I don't know if there are any direct flights from Tirana to London, but if they are, I think the Albanians would need a visa from the UK to actually be let on the plane in Albania.
Right. So, and then I am obviously not encouraging criminality, but if you can get into this kind of underworld where you're in this world of these smugglers, then I'm sure it cannot be beyond the wit of man to get a fake piece of paper.
You could bribe the staff at the airport. But
I'm sure lots of them do kind of have fake passports.
Anyway, you know what? I'm going to shut up before I get myself into a spot of trouble knowing me. But I don't know. You tell me, what am I missing? Get in touch, gbviews@gbnews.com. Next up, the one that I know lots of you are getting very angry about with me is the pension conversation. I want to ask you a very simple question. We spend a small fortune on pensions, state pensions. Is it time that we stop the triple lock and perhaps make them means tested? Your thoughts? See you in 2.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dewbs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners on TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Put in your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media.
We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry. Till 7 o'clock tonight, David Curtin and Joanna Williams remain alongside me. Wayne, what a good idea this is. We were just talking about Wilko, of course, going into administration, 12,000 jobs potentially up at risk. He says, why don't people organise a TikTok mass shop to save Wilko's fortunes? I like it. I see what you did there. Go on then. You could start it, and anyone that wants to save Wilko's can go along and shop at a time and place that you all agree. Some of you saying that this is all because of Amazon. They are the victim of the Amazon effect. I suspect if you go back in time, there's lots of small companies that perhaps lost their business because of bigger stores like Wilko. So maybe that is just capitalism. I don't know. Right. Let's get into the topic that's got you all shouting at me, shall we? The state pension. Get this, everybody. In 2 years' time, apparently what we spend on the state pension will overtake education, policing and defence spend put together. That has now started a conversation about whether or not the government's so-called triple lock, which basically means that pensions rise by average earnings, inflation, or 2.5%, whichever's highest. People are now saying it's time for that perhaps to scrap and or for pensions to be means tested. Lots of you are getting in touch with me quite angrily about this. Peter says, Michelle, if you're going to have this conversation, can you frame it properly as follows? The state pension is not a state benefit. It is a very poor return for a working lifetime of contributions into a compulsory government mismanaged pension system. He says, I started work at 15 with nothing, worked all my way up, retired at 66, comfortably off because I grafted when I was young. I was busy supporting the then older population. What do you make to it all?
Yeah, absolutely. We should keep the triple lock because people who've paid into the system all their lives and have been promised that they're going to get this amount of much, and it isn't this amount of money. It isn't much money they get on the state pension when they retire. They should get what they've been promised, absolutely. We spend and waste so much money in this country, tens, even hundreds of billions of pounds on things which I think are completely unnecessary.
Pensions change all the time, don't they? So, for example, pension ages, they evolve. There's a lot of ladies, they get often referred to as waspy women. They will feel very cheated, and rightly so in my mind, in terms of some of the losses that they've had. So things don't ever stay the same, do they?
No, they're not. And the pension age has been put up and up and up. It's coming up to 66 now. It's going up to 67, isn't it? And it was 60 for women and 65 for men. So it's increasing, and that's taking a bit of money off what the government needs to pay. But
so you think hands off the triple lock, keep it as it is. Joanna?
Well, I think it's certainly appropriate to ask the question and to review where we're going with pensions and to look at the affordability here.
Yes, but what's your answer, though?
Well, I think the real problem is that we've got, it very much relates to what we've been talking about in relation to Wilkinson's. We've got a cripplingly unproductive economy, and we actually need to look at how we can make the British economy more productive.
Yeah, but what's your answer to the question in a couple of years' time? I've just explained the amount of spending we're going to be doing. It's going to be absolutely vast in comparison to some of the other areas. So it's a simple question. Do you think the triple lock should be scrapped?
No.
You don't? So
No.
you would keep the triple lock. What about it being means tested?
I think perhaps...
So should Alan Sugar, for example, my old boss, be getting his state pension?
I think perhaps there is more of an argument for looking at means testing. I'm not saying we should definitely do means testing, but certainly looking at that. I think there is a myth that all pensioners are wealthy and own their own property. I think that's absolutely not the case. Lots of pensioners are struggling financially and still living in rented accommodation despite being pensioners. I think it's also the case that this is something that you've got a social contract where people were told 40 years ago that if you make these payments, you will be looked after in your old age. And to then breach that social contract is a really big step to take.
1 in 5 pensioners, apparently that's more than 2 million people, are living in relative poverty in the UK. That's according to Pensioners in Poverty data. What about means testing? Where do you stand on that?
no, I don't think it should be means testing. I mean, you mentioned Alan Sugar. He's paid in billions or hundreds of millions, maybe, in tax in his life. A lot of money. So I very much doubt he would actually want to claim the state pension because it's not very much compared to what he's got. But I don't think it should be means tested. If you paid in more, you should still be allowed to take the benefit out that you've paid in for.
Yeah, if I was Alan Sugar, I would definitely claim my state pension for all the reasons that we've just been discussing. If you pay in, you pay your dues and all the rest of it, well, it's your money, you've earned it. What you do with it, give it to charity or whatever, then is your business, isn't it? One of my viewers here, and I've just lost your name. I saw your comment. I thought I must read that one out. Oh, yeah, Paula, there you go. Paula, you say, Michelle, if as a country we can afford to pay £6 million a day for migrants to be in 4-star hotels, if we can afford at the drop of a hat to spend billions for wars in Ukraine, etc., then we can damn sure afford our pensions for our British people. We have earned them, says Paula. Hear to that. Look, time flies, doesn't it, when you are having fun? I have to say lots of response to that pension, George, as well, saying, I have earned everything. We deserve everything that we get. Sheila says it's really hard to live on the pension before you talk about cutting it and means testing it. You try and live on it and see how you get on. But look, that's all we've got time for. David, Joanna, thank you for your company as well. Have a good night. Your pension's safe. I'll see you tomorrow.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest broadcast for GB News. I'm Greg Dewhurst. We're going to see increasing risk of showers as we move towards the weekend, but there will be some sunny spells, just turning a little cooler too. If we look at the bigger picture, this area of low pressure moves in another area of low pressure for the weekend, bringing the risk of showers, though not as windy as recent weekends. For this evening, it's been fine end to the day for many, but we do have this area of rain pushing north and eastwards. It could be heavier for a time across Northern Ireland as it crosses into Scotland too. Elsewhere, generally quite a cloudy, warm, muggy night to come. A lot of cloud around, some drizzle over the hills. Temperatures remaining in double figures, 17, 18 degrees as a low for some of us. Bit of a cloudy start to Friday, still some rain across Scotland, heavy at times, pushing away northeastwards, and then slowly through the morning it starts to brighten up. We could see this area of cloud push into southeast England though to give some showery rain for the afternoon. Elsewhere, bright afternoon, sunny spells and scattered showers, turning breezy around western coast, making it feel a little cooler here. Still highs reaching 27 degrees towards East Anglia. And then Saturday, this low approaches us, gives spells of rain across the north and the west of the UK as the winds pick up. Best of the drier, brighter weather holding on towards the southeast. But even here we'll see some showers moving in later on in the day and quite blustery. Temperatures a little cooler too, and that continues into Sunday and Monday with further showers and temperatures a little below average.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Monday to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.